In many ways, China has spread its wings. They are flexing their muscles in various ways, because you never know about these guys that are leading on the top of the pyramid. Is China already the mightiest, the biggest economy in the world? That is a question that we're going to be answering now in this video. I'm Markku Wilenius, the traveling futurist. In order to understand what has happened with China, we need to go back to the several decades. China after Mao in the 1970s started to move on, and by the early 80s they keep up a very different kind of a pace in their development, made the necessary adjustments and rejuvenation of the whole way that the society was working, with an impact that China actually was rising more than 10% annually up until 2005, and very fast even thereafter. So today we have the situation where the purchasing power parity of that country is number one in the world, even if nominally the USA is still the largest economy. And that has meant a lot for China, because China has suddenly taken a world stage. Almost so rapidly all of this has happened that we have had a hard time to keep that pace. The issue here is this: China is not growing internally, but it's also growing externally, meaning that its impact, its influence is growing rapidly as we speak. As a result, the foreign direct investment of that country 2021 was around 180 billion, which was about 1/10 of the whole foreign direct investments of the world. That gives you an idea of the size of the activity. And when you look at where did they actually focus their investments, apart from China, that went to the South Korea, to the Japan, to the US, to the Germany, and that went to the Virgin Islands and some other tax paradises as well. There was a huge influence spread. And of course also very much in Africa, where actually almost 40% of all the infrastructure investments in Africa in the last years have been devised by China. And you can trace their impact also in such a faraway places like in South America, for instance. So they are basically everywhere. They have taken the global stage by not only exerting their mighty military power, but what is called the soft power. Soft power is a term that was coined by political scientist Joseph Nye in the late 1980s to describe actually the new rising power of America, which was not only about the military strength, but the other ways that they can impact the others to arrive at the decisions that are favorable for them. In many ways, China has spread its wings. Another question is that, is this going to be continued? That is a very interesting question, in fact, because China has also changed somewhat internally. China used to have a certain idea of the freedom which was embedded into their political system, but with the rise of Xi Jinping, this freedom has been harshly reduced. China has become, in the last 10 years or so, much more authoritarian, much more oppressive for those that are voicing different opinions. And also, they are flexing their muscles in various ways, showing their current strength. Now, that is kind of something that they might be able to control for some time, but if they cross certain borders, the politics inside become too oppressive, then at least there is a chance that some kind of a counter movement will start to emerge, which is in fact already happened, but they are still very much pushed to the marginal. But China's sustainability rests basically on on two conditions. The one is that the middle class feels that they are happy with what they have. They can achieve their own little goals in their life without government intervening too much. The other condition is that they don't start to do any drastic measures outside of China. And one of that possibilities, of course, the possible invasion to Taiwan. Now we have seen what has happened with Russia once they took too much of the leap forward in their capacity to deal with this expansionist idea. And now what has happened with Russia is that they have basically excluded from international collaboration of all kinds. Now this is something that China cannot afford, because China is very much a trading country and it needs Western allies. It cannot even claim the way that Russia does, okay, we can do without the West, even if they cannot. But China even less so. So China cannot afford to make such a move that pushes them to the same type of the position where Russia is right now. However, because you never know about these guys that are leading on the top of the pyramid, they might be doing this kind of a drastic mistake as well, with the result then that China's future will be very, very different. But for the time being, what happens, which is actually quite natural, is that China's growth is decreasing as we speak. It cannot keep up that pace, and soon they're also going to have another challenge, which is the demographic challenge. One-child policy they had to impose to do something with a hugely growing population. That is something that they need to be be able to match in with, together with the modern idea of having civil rights in the society. As the people in that country are becoming much more informed and much more educated in general. That's the crucial point now. The US attempts to curb the China's influence has been rising steadily, because they don't want the China start to dictate how the countries around them start to behave. That's not according to the US interest, and they're gonna do everything to prevent that from happening, because if they let that happen, then the polarization of the two superpowers could sort of escalate to the point where actually they sort of start to depart as a system, and that would be benefit for no one in the long run, and Americans know that. Biden definitely wants to prevent that from happening. Summarizing, China could fail for endogenous reasons, meaning that China would sort of collapse internally, or for exogenous reasons, which means that they would do something drastic, like joining with Russia to fight in Ukraine, or invading Taiwan. That would dramatically alter their current position and make them a scapegoat in the international community for disrupting the global order. But if they can somehow avoid these two things from happening, then China will probably continue to rise, because there is still a lot of ambition in the country that has risen out of complete poverty in less than 50 years, which is quite a feat. Subscribe to my channel and see other related videos where you can learn more about the future.